I've always been an introvert. Growing up with a passion for writing, my diary became my sanctuary. Through my divorce, the birth of my daughter Mia, and the subsequent struggles of being the single mother, my diary bore witness to it all. Each page was a fragment of my soul, and though it was deeply personal, it was also deeply cathartic. Living in the heart of the city, crime wasn't unheard of, but I'd always felt secure in our little flat on the 7th floor. I figured any burglar would probably prefer easier targets. I'd never been more wrong. It started one evening when I returned home from work. Maya greeted me at the door, her face pale and her eyes filled with unease. "Mom, there's something you need to hear," she whispered, her voice quivering. She played an audio recording from an anonymous podcast platform, and my heart sank. It was my voice, my words, my memories, my fears, but not my voice. It was as if someone had stolen my diary and read it out loud. The voice was distorted, cold, and emotionless. "What? How?" I stuttered, shock rendering me incoherent. "That's not all," Maya said, her hand trembling as she showed me other posts from the same account. It was not just mine. Several other diaries had been read out, their innermost secrets laid bare for anyone to hear. My mind raced. Was this just a prank by some tech-savvy teenagers? But the intimacy of the details, the way the voice reveled in reading each secret, spoke of a more sinister intent. The following week was a blur. Reports of break-ins spread throughout the city, yet nothing of value was stolen from any of the homes. The burglar's only interest was the diaries, and with each new recording, the voice grew more mocking, more menacing. I tried to put it out of my mind. I bought a new diary and started again, ensuring it was locked away securely each night. But every evening, my heart would race as I approached my front door, wondering if we'd been visited by this twisted intruder. One night, after putting Mia to bed, I decided to listen to another of the uploaded recordings. As the haunting voice started, it sent shivers down my spine. There was something eerily familiar about it. It wasn't until the recording reached a particularly emotional passage from one woman's diary that I realized what it was. It was a reflection of a time when her son had almost drowned. I remembered the event. The woman was my friend Sarah. The recognition was like a splash of cold water. My paranoia intensified. I started double-checking the locks. I invested in an expensive security system. But the dread refused to leave. Weeks turned to months. The police were baffled. The burglar left no trace behind, and with no physical evidence, they were chasing shadows. One evening, after Maya had gone to bed, there was a knock at my door. It was Sarah. Her face was as white as a sheet. "Can I come in?" she whispered. She looked terrified. I ushered her in, and she hesitated before speaking. "I think I know who's behind this." She played a voice note from an unknown number. It was that voice again, but this time it was different. "Isn't technology marvelous, Sarah? Reading your secrets was entertaining, but hearing your reactions, that's truly delicious." Sarah's face was etched with terror. "My phone was hacked. This person has been listening to us." Suddenly, everything clicked. The recordings, the eerie familiarity of the voice. It wasn't a stranger. It was an algorithm. A software that mimicked human emotions, able to reproduce our words with chilling accuracy. Together, we approached a friend who was an expert in cybersecurity. He discovered a sophisticated malware embedded in our phones, one that allowed the intruder to not just access our diaries but also our calls, messages, even our very conversations. I completely forgot that I scanned the pages of the diary using the new phone app to convert it into text form for safekeeping. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The police, with the help of tech experts, traced the malware to its source, a seemingly innocuous tech firm that had recently provided a free system update to our phones. The firm was a front for a twisted individual. His perverse joy wasn't in stealing valuables, but in stealing intimate moments, personal vulnerabilities, and then savoring the ensuing horror of his victims. When they finally apprehended him, I saw his face on the news. He was unremarkable, just another face in the crowd. But his eyes, they were cold, devoid of empathy. Those were the eyes of someone who revealed in others terror. That night, as Maya and I curled up on our couch, our home finally feeling secure, my phone buzzed. a message from an unknown number. Well played. But remember, you can't escape your shadow. It was a chilling reminder that monsters don't just lurk in the dark. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. And as technology evolves, so do the methods of those who seek to terrorize. The world felt a lot less safe, and the shadows a lot more ominous. I've always prided myself on being the owner of one of the most successful gyms in the city center. People raved about the well-maintained equipment, the motivating environment, and our exceptional trainers. But then, after the introduction of a new personal trainer, everything changed. At first, it seemed like a stroke of good luck, but little did I know that my gym would become the epicenter of a psychological storm that would jeopardize everything I built. Eric was the new hire, a man of medium build, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. But what caught my attention was his unwavering, intense gaze. It's a look I can't quite describe, as if he held the keys to something powerful or forbidden. The gym members seemed enamored with him right away. His sessions were booked solid within his first week. Every client left drenched in sweat and with a new, ardent glow in their eyes. It wasn't long before the stories began circulating, the shocking transformations that extended beyond mere physical changes. Megan, one of our most committed members, was one of the first. After just 3 sessions with Eric, her reserved and introverted nature had turned aggressive and dominating. She began picking fights with others, a complete 180 from the supportive gym buddy she once was. Raj, a corporate worker who used the gym as a way to manage stress, began to exhibit extreme paranoia after his sessions with Eric. He accused other gym members of stalking him and said he could hear whispers coming from the machines. I observed all of this with growing unease. The patterns were too consistent to be coincidental. The singular link was Eric. One day, as I reviewed our CCTV footage out of paranoia and concern, I noticed something unsettling. After his sessions, Eric would hand his clients a small bottle, instructing them to take a sip. After they did, their demeanor would change almost immediately. They'd stand taller, their expressions more intense and animated. I confronted Eric, but he remained calm, almost unnaturally so. He explained that it was just a special, all-natural energy drink that he gave to his clients for a quick boost after their workouts. I wanted to believe him. Business was booming after all, but my gut told me otherwise. Out of concern, I discreetly collected one of the empty bottles left behind and sent it for testing. What I discovered was truly horrifying. The results revealed a cocktail of potent hallucinogens, mood enhancers, and something else the lab couldn't identify. When I confronted Eric with the evidence, he laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You've seen nothing yet," he whispered, his intense gaze now fixed on me. My skin prickled with dread. That very evening, members who had trained under Eric organized an unscheduled workout session. They moved as one, in eerie synchrony, their every motion amplified by the loud, rhythmic beating of their heartbeats echoing through the gym speakers. As the gym owner, I was held in high regard, but now they looked at me with hostility, their faces twisted in anger and resentment. Megan approached, a sinister grin painted across her face. "You shouldn't have pried," she hissed, followed by Raj, who had a wild, haunted look in his eyes. The group started closing in on me. Panic surged, and my mind raced. It was clear Eric had not just transformed their bodies, but he had seized control of their minds. Realizing I was outnumbered, I ran towards the back exit, but to my horror, it was chained shut. From behind, I could hear them chanting in unison, a disturbing hymn that echoed off the walls. My only way out was through the locker rooms. As I sprinted through, I could see them reflected in the mirrors, a distorted vision of their former selves, hungry for something I couldn't comprehend. Barely making it to the exit, I stumbled out into the daylight, panting heavily. I immediately dialed the police. Within minutes, they arrived, but it was too late. Eric and his converted members had vanished. The aftermath was chaotic. The drugs quickly wore off the members, and they remembered little of what had transpired. The gym was closed down for an investigation, and my reputation was in tatters. The police never found Eric. No trace of his past or indication of his whereabouts. Some say he went underground, continuing his sinister experiments elsewhere. My gym was gone, but the scars of that ordeal remain. Every time I see a bottle of energy drink or hear the echoing chant in my nightmares or catch a glimpse of someone on the street who looks eerily like Eric, my heart skips a beat. 4. In the heart of the city, a man with an intense gaze might just be waiting, preparing for his next transformation. And the horror of it all is that no one knows where or when he'll strike again. The mountains have always called to me. Growing up in a small town nestled at the foot of the imposing Mount Wendigo, I knew its trails like the back of my hand. As a child, my father shared with me tales of the old settlers, of how the very name Wendigo was derived from local legends about creatures who hunted humans. Many said those tales were pure folklore, told to keep children from straying into the mountains, but I had always felt there was a seed of truth in them. By adulthood, I'd taken up the mantle of local ranger. Every day, I patrolled those very trails, ensuring the safety of visitors, many of whom were tourists lured by the mountain's beauty. But the recent incidents were like nothing I'd ever seen before. Hikers were going missing. One minute they'd be on the trail, and the next, they'd vanish, leaving behind a solitary, cryptic symbol etched into the dirt or on a nearby tree. A triangle with a line cutting through its center. Local authorities were stumped. The town was buzzing with rumors, and for the first time, I felt a cold prickle of dread at the thought of patrolling those very trails. It was on a cold, overcast morning that I encountered a hiker, Elise. Her striking blue eyes looked haunted as she approached me at the trailhead. "Are you the ranger?" she asked. "That's me," I replied, studying her. "Are you headed up the trail?" She hesitated. "Yes, but I've heard about the missing people." I nodded. "Just stick to the trail, and you'll be fine." We chatted for a while longer, and as she walked away, I had an overwhelming feeling of unease. I decided to keep a close eye on her from a distance. The mountains were silent, except for the occasional rustling of leaves and distant bird calls. The hours went by, but I kept my pace, maintaining a safe distance from Elise. It was when she reached Echo Point, a famous lookout, that I saw him. A tall figure, dressed entirely in black, standing a few meters away, watching her. He was far enough away that his features were obscured, but I could feel the intensity of his gaze. Elise seemed unaware of his presence. The eerie silence was punctuated by the soft murmur of the wind. My instincts screamed danger. I slowly approached the scene, hand on the pistol I always carried. Just then, the mysterious man made a move towards Elise. Panic surged through me. I yelled, warning her, and sprinted towards them. The shout startled Elise, who turned just in time to see the figure bearing down on her. She screamed, stumbling backwards. By the time I reached her, the man had vanished. "Who was that?" she panted, clinging to my arm. "I don't know," I admitted, scanning the surroundings, "but he's the reason people have been disappearing." A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the stories from my childhood. But this was no mythological beast. It was a living, breathing human. We began our descent, but the feeling of being watched never left. Each rustling leaf, each creaking branch, heightened our anxiety. The trail twisted and turned. Suddenly, there it was, the symbol etched onto a tree, the triangle with a line through it. But this time next to it were fresh gouges that resembled the outline of a human. "We need to hurry," I said. The farther we descended, the more symbols we found, each one more elaborate and menacing than the last. The realization dawned on me. The stalker was leading us into a trap. Suddenly, Elise stopped. "I hear footsteps," she whispered. I strained my ears, and sure enough, the soft sound of footsteps approached from behind. Without a word, we veered off the trail and hid behind a large boulder. Moments later, the mysterious figure walked by, and to my horror, I recognized him. It was Marcus, a childhood friend and fellow ranger. But there was something very wrong. His eyes were vacant, his movements robotic. "We need to understand what's happening," Elise said, determination flashing in her eyes. Together, we followed Marcus, keeping a safe distance. He led us to a hidden cave, its entrance marked with the same ominous symbol. The interior was lit by a strange, pulsating light. As we stepped in, we found a sight that would haunt me forever. There were multiple figures, all dressed in black, standing around a stone table. On the table lay a person, bound and unconscious. Next to them stood Marcus, holding a sharp instrument. We were witnessing an initiation. I realized the horrifying truth. The symbol wasn't just a marker. It was a sign of membership to this deranged cult of which Marcus was a part. Their motive was clear. They were brainwashing their victims, adding to their ranks. As we backed away, a twig snapped underfoot. Every head turned towards us, their eyes, empty and soulless, fixed on our forms. We turned and ran, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind us. We made it to the town, alerting the authorities. A subsequent raid found the cave empty, the cultists having disappeared. But Marcus was found wandering nearby, confused and disoriented, with no memory of the recent events. The town was abuzz with the revelations. The hiking trails were temporarily shut down, and Mount Wendigo's sinister legend grew even darker. As for me, I never looked at the mountains the same way again. They no longer called to me. Instead, they whispered chilling tales of the silent stalkers of Mount Wendigo.